Welcome to the Chiefs. The Chiefs is a White Ark podcast aimed at specifically giving you an insight into what makes great leaders and entrepreneurs in a variety of organisations tick. We call them Chiefs. My name is James Ciuffatelli, and together with my White Ark co-chief, Joe Hands, we're going to attempt to take you on a journey and talk to as many chiefs across as many industries as we can to give you an insight into A, what makes them tick, and B, what makes their enterprises thrive, and more importantly, what they've learnt along the way. The Chiefs.
Recording has started.
Perfect. Off we go.
By joining, you are giving consent. Okay, yes, I consent. Okay. Yes.
Today, we're very lucky to have Paul Hitchcock from Patties joining us. And what we want to know is the lessons you've learned along your journey and what makes you tick, and a little bit about Patties and how you've been able to navigate this really interesting COVID period. So Paul is the CEO of Patties Food, and you know, in the tagline of Patties, it says, we're creators of irresistible comfort food. And when I think about Patties, I think about 4 and 20 pies in the football, and I think about Nana's apple pies that I used to have at my grandmother's house when I was a little kid, and I can still have today. And probably everyone who's listening to this podcast has got memories that they think about when they think about Patties. But when you go on the website, you also realize there's lots of brands associated to Patties, not just the general ones that you think about. So for the next 25 minutes or so, we're really going to delve deep into Paul, Patties, what makes him tick, what lessons he's learned along his journey as he's been the CEO of many different companies, and what gets him out of bed in the morning and gives him the energy to keep doing what he needs to do from a leadership perspective. So welcome, Paul, to the Chiefs podcast. And I was going to start with asking you to describe yourself in 3 words.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me. Passionate, real, and hardworking. I know that's 4, but
that's okay.
That's what okay. It is.
Oh, that's great. And where do you think, Paul, your passion comes from? I mean, what is the thing that gets you really passionate?
Oh, I think anything you do, if you want to do it well, you've got to enjoy what you're doing. You've got to be passionate, and whether it's a sport, a hobby, business, you know, you've got to enjoy what you do in life. We spend a lot of time in our jobs. And you've got to want to get out of bed. You've got to want to do the best. And if you're passionate, want to do the best, you'll do a great job. And from that comes promotions and money. That's all outcomes of, but you have to believe it. And, you know, I always say to people, if you don't feel like getting out of bed to go to work, you know, it's either have a look at yourself, and if you just don't have the passion for that job, go find another job.
Yeah.
Life's too short to be miserable, right? You got to be passionate about what you do. Otherwise, you won't do the best job you can.
Yeah, it's really good advice. And I think you're right. I think when you find the job that you're really passionate about and it gives you that joy, you realize where you've been on the journey and you haven't actually been that happy or you haven't been that passionate. But it's also about finding what makes you personally passionate, right? And what drives you. So when you're not working, because obviously we spend a lot of our life working, what do you do? What do you do to give you energy and smile and give you a buzz?
Oh, look, I like sport. So I watch a lot of sport, either on TV or live. And I also, I'm a rugby referee over the winter. And, you know, teenagers, males, females, I like getting out on the field and running around. I guess over the years, I've been so busy with work and my own family, I haven't really done much in the community. And what I'm doing now is trying to put a bit more back into the community. And I enjoy getting out and refereeing young people in rugby. And I'll tell you, it's very challenging, you know, parents on the sideline, you know, you think, you know, better get back to work. That's a lot easier than a whole bunch of, you know, dads yelling at the ref. But I love it. And, you know, I'm refereeing girls touch rugby over the weekends now. So Saturday mornings, I referee a number of games and tournaments, and I enjoy it. It gets me out of bed in the morning and gets me doing a bit of exercise. And I feel like I'm giving something back. And I have a bit of fun too.
That sounds fantastic. And I think the next question, you know, leads into, obviously from a personal perspective, you know, doing some of this sports stuff and running these teams is, you know, is different to the business world. But,
Yep.
you look at your CV and the experience you've had, Paul, in terms of the different CEO gigs that you've had. I'd be interested to know, what are some of the key lessons and what are some of the advice that you've got for people about being a CEO, and what are the key skills and capabilities that you really need to focus on?
For me, I think the one thing I've learned over the years through mistakes
Yeah.
is start with the people.
Yeah.
You start with the people. Business is always about people. You can have the best product, the best technology, the best of everything.
Yeah.
If you don't have the best people, you will underperform versus what you're capable of. And, I think in my early days, I cut people a bit of slack, and I spent a lot of time trying to coach. And what I do now is I start with the executive team, and that is the most important team. And when I joined Patties, by the end of day 2, I'd made a decision on who was staying and who was going.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds a bit heartless, but what I've found with myself over the years, I typically know early on, and then in the past, I've probably taken too long to make the call, particularly to let someone go. And bad people, and I won't say they're always bad, so people, non-performers, don't get better with time.
No.
You're better to make the call up front. So by the end of day 2, I knew exactly who was in, who was out, and within 3 months, I had new people hitting the ground. And you've got to have the best team around you, and you just need people that have got a different skill set, smarter, hardworking, all of that complement your skills. And I don't feel I have to know everything, but I do. I'm a generalist. And for my functional leaders, I need good specialists. I need people that are collaborative. I need people that are the A players, if you like, because, if you don't and you have B players, they typically hire C players.
Yeah.
And when I recruited my team at Patties, who I'm very proud of, they then in turn hired their direct reports. And that middle management group's really key because they do all the work, right? Us executive types, we're up there, but that middle management, they do the heavy lifting. So you need a good executive leadership team and a good management team to really get the right results. So, start with people. And, for me, I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I don't pretend to know it all. Most of the time I don't when I walk into a business, but I'm curious. And I think I've developed being a good listener over the years. I think in my early days, and I see this quite often with managers and leaders, they think they know it all, or they think, hey, I'm the boss, I need to have all the answers. No, you don't. You need to be really good at asking questions and then be a really, really good listener. So that's a real skill, being a good listener. And I was pretty hopeless over the years, but I think I've got better through feedback at being a better listener. I always like to challenge when I come into a business. There's always ancient Anglican customs or ways of doing things. And, it's this curiosity, the challenge. And also, the more senior you become, the higher you go in leadership roles, the more information gets filtered. So you've got to understand that people will tell you what they want you to know. And I'm not saying, and so just being curious, ask questions, join the dots, get a number of data points, verify things for yourself. Don't believe everything you're told. I find just make decisions, but be considered. And I think in the past, in the early days, I probably felt, I have to make a decision, there's pressure. People need to know. They need to know now. Or someone's knocking at your door. I need to know 24. No, you don't, actually.
No.
It's amazing. Okay, and quite often now I won't be rushed. I'll think about things. Okay, leave it with me. Let me sleep on that.
Yeah.
And I buy myself some time just to think through the alternatives. And, people are very good at putting pressure, particularly some of your own team sometimes, or suppliers or customers or third parties. Don't be flustered. Don't feel you have to make a decision now, but do make the decision. Don't procrastinate, that's for sure. I think it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You learn by making mistakes. And I think, I remember one of my old bosses, my Lion Nathan days in the brewing business, Kevin Roberts, I remember him saying to me, in his early days, he'd try and, make 3 decisions a day and try and get 3 right out of 3. Now he makes 10 decisions a day and hopes to get 7 out of 10 right.
Yeah.
And the point is, he's making 7 right decisions versus 3 right decisions. And I think that's sort of a lesson that's not been lost on me. So I'm okay to make mistakes as long as I'm ideally getting more right than wrong. And I think from time to time as a leader, you don't be afraid to stand alone.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to stand alone. Sometimes, you take all the input and people might want to go in one direction and I'll go, yeah, I hear you, but this is what I'd like to do. and it's okay to be unpopular because leadership's not a popularity contest, but you want to be respected, you want to be trusted, you want to have high integrity, all that stuff, but don't feel bad about having to stand alone. And from time to time you do, because you know it's the right thing to do, and you just got to stick to your guns.
Oh, it's great advice. There's a lot in there, but I think some of the ones that stood out to me was that whole curiosity piece, right? You know, asking the right questions and being curious and listening. And something I could definitely work on more is, you know, really listening to people's responses. That whole piece around starting with the people side and getting that leadership team right. I mean, I've read a lot of leadership books around moving quickly on that is one of the key things, right? It's easier said than done, but making a hard decision and setting that team up right. Because you're right, they're the ones who hire the next level down or the next level down. And that whole leadership piece, a lot of other things in business can sort themselves out. But if you haven't got that leadership piece right, kind of things break down. You can have the best product in the world, the best supply chain in the world, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have that leadership piece right, I like the concept of being confident enough to stand alone, because I sometimes, as leaders, especially in a CEO role like you've got, Paul, it's a lonely time, right? It's a lonely place. So you've got your leadership team, but ultimately the decision falls to you to make. And sometimes that isn't always the most popular decision. So, you know, how do you deal with that feeling alone from a leadership perspective? How do you manage that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think sometimes just trust your judgment. You know, you've got to, like, you've made it to the CEO role for a reason. People see, and I think a lot of CEOs, you know, we never feel we're ready, and the only way to learn is actually do it. You know, you can be a direct report to, and I've been a direct report to a number of CEOs over the years. It's not the same.
No.
And you just have to back yourself and say, look, on the information I've given and on my judgment and skills and experience, this is the decision I'm making. And you know what? If you get it wrong, okay, you get it wrong.
Yeah.
But gee, you know, back yourself and be prepared to defend your position and mount an argument. And sometimes it's, you know, it's easy and it's not good enough to say, well, I'm the boss, you need to do it my way. No, do the why. This is why we want to do it, not just the what, but the why. And quite often I find with people, they may not agree in this initially, but it's like, okay, I understand, I get context now. I see why you want to do it that right. Okay. And they support you. But sometimes you're not gonna please everybody, right? This is not politics, you know.
No.
Like we're developing a political leadership now, very populist. You know, let's go with the popular. Let's go with the, you know, what that failed the pub test and all this other stuff, all these other phrases we've got, which is okay for politics, but it's not for business. And you know, I cannot, unlike a certain premier in a state, say I don't know what happened there. I don't know who made that decision about quarantine. In my business and any other CEO, your buck stop. You can't blame someone else, even if someone in your team's, you know, got something wrong. Hey, you're the leader. You got to. The buck stops at you, and that's the deal, right? And that comes with the job. And if you don't like that, go do something else. I like the responsibility, and I think, you know, you got to. Some people always, you know, say, I want to be the general manager. I want to be this. You got to want to do it, because it comes with a whole lot of other things. Like you got to take responsibility, and the buck stops at you, and you can't blame someone else or say, I can't remember who made that decision. Sorry, doesn't cut it.
No, I think that's really good advice. So you've been the Patties CEO for 4 years, or over 4 years. So what do you enjoy most about your role at Patties?
We've got a very good board and shareholding group. So our board is made up of private equity group called Pacific Equity Partners, and also the Rijs family. So the Rijs family were the original founders of the Patties business over 50 years ago. Dutch immigrants came to Australia with 6 boys, and the boys who older boys now. 2 of them are on our board and represent their families' interests. And I have the PEP team on the board, and their approach with me and my management team is, how can we help? How can we make you successful? And that's really reassuring, because it gives you confidence to try a few things. They're behind me. Whereas I think a lot of boards over the years that I've been involved with, someone's always trying to prove they're the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
and catch you out or catch management out. This is not like that here. It's like,
No.
how do we grow? What more can we do? They like me bouncing things off them, and I use them to bounce ideas and
Yeah.
thoughts and positions that I have on things. They give me really good feedback, but in a constructive way, right? Because they want management to succeed, because that means the business succeeds. That means it's great for the shareholders, it's great for the board, it's great for our customers, it's great for suppliers, our staff, everybody, right? So like, there's nothing to argue there about. So I love that. And also, they have invested in our Patties business. We've done 4 acquisitions. We've bought a new $20 million pie line. We've bought a new food meals factory in Victoria. We've bought a business in New Zealand. We've upgraded that business and spent over $20 million on plant and equipment. So they invest for growth. And I think that, for me, that's terrific to know that the board and the shareholders are going to put their money where their mouth is. So that's terrific. But also my team, I think I look at the people in my business. We are very much a glass half full culture, right? And look, that's a big positive. Sometimes, we have to stop ourselves and say, okay, guys, but what if, let's think of the risk. But most of the time, we are glass half full, can do, will do, whatever it takes sort of attitude, with a very collaborative team, a hard-working team, a team that support each other. And I think, COVID has, like a number of businesses, I think we've all become more supportive of each other. We've all become more caring. And in our business, no one is bigger than the team, right? No individual is bigger than the team, and it's all about the team. And my organisation, if we get big egos, if we get people that don't fit as part of the team, they get spat out.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work like that in our business. So I love the culture. And at the end of the day, businesses get the culture they deserve. And if you want a great culture, you need leaders who are living, breathing, walking the talk. And if you want other cultures, well, you'll end up with those as well, depending on how the leadership approaches it.
That's great. And that whole piece around culture, right, and values, and most companies have their values on their wall, on their website, and I would say a lot of companies don't live their values, right? And it comes back to one of the first points you made around getting that leadership right and actually being authentic, how you actually genuinely live the values and call people out when they're not living the values. So from a Patties perspective, how do you see that kind of value piece come into life?
I think it's important to do what you say. Like, in our business, we're passionate about food. We value quality. And I always say to people, if you're not happy with the food that's going out our plant, you stop the line. If there's something you wouldn't feed your families, it does not go out the door.
Yeah.
And these things get tested from time to time. So in my 4 years, we have only had 1 product recall, and I remember it well. And it was a supplier top 50 company in this country, supplied us with apple. And some of the apple, they rang us and said it goes through a part of the plant, through a glass pipe, and at the end of one of the 8 pipes, there's some little glass fragments missing. We think it might be in your apple. Oh. We had made 27,000 cartons of product with that apple. They couldn't be sure it was in our product. They could not be sure. We went and looked at it. Straight away, we did a product withdrawal.
Yeah.
And pulled all the product back from warehouses and stores. And we could account for 97% of those cartons, but we couldn't account for 3%. And, our management, we were meeting every day, because, recalls in food business is a big deal, right? Or potential recall. And at this stage, we didn't know. But there were 3% of the products missing. And I just said to the team, guys, there's 3% of our apple pies that we can't account for that may have glass. And bear in mind, we had no consumer complaints.
No.
We had opened up a whole bunch of boxes and filtered, gone through and sieved. We could not find anything. All we had was the supplier saying it might be in your product. And we had cited we'd gone to their factory, and yes, it was possible. So I said to the guys, we can't find 3%. Would you feed this to your family? If there was a box of Nana's apple pies at home, would you give it to your family, knowing a small chance there could be glass in it? And we all said no. That's good enough, done. And that was a sort of the principle we had. So we did a full recall, it cost us $500,000.
Mm.
This is because you got to dump all that stock, you got to pull it off
Yeah.
the shelves. The retailers, charge you a lot of money for recalls. But I think it was important. We said quality was important. We care about our customers. We care about the quality of our food, and that's what we did. And we could have easily have turned a blind eye.
Yeah.
We could have we could have pretended, and still we have had no complaints, by the way. Nothing,
No.
right? Nothing came out of it other than a bloody big bill. But I think it's important, and I've told that story to all of our staff many times. Why? Because I want to send a message. This is really, really important. We care about people.
Yeah.
We care about our customers. We care about our food, and we will make the right decisions. And it's not about money.
No.
It's not just look, because we're playing a long game here, and what we've seen now is I had to go on radio and explain that, because obviously Patties, we got a bit of attention at the time, but our sales have bounced back stronger than they were before the recall. There was a small blip as we took product off shelf, but I can tell you now our sales of that Nana's apple pies have never been stronger, and so I'm proud of the position we took. And that's you've got to have principles, and sometimes people say all this stuff,
Yeah.
but you got to put your money where your mouth is. And this is where, it's easy. It would have been easy, as I say, to turn a blind eye. That's not what we do here. That's not
No.
what we do.
No. That's a great example, Paul. So Patties is a well-known brand, and I mentioned two things that I when I think about Patties, I like the 420 pies and the Nana's apple pies that you just mentioned. But what's your favourite product?
Well, we've got really good products, and Herbert Adams slow cooked pies I like. My favourite in the 4 and 20 is the Angus, because it's a big chunky Angus meat pie, and I like the 4 and 20 Angus pie. That's probably my favourite. Although when I'm driving, I like a Traveller, because it's easy to eat with one hand. Very important to be able to drive and eat with one hand. Anyway, and Angus is a great pie at home. I have those at home.
Fantastic. So this has been a strange year, 2020, right? We all started the year probably thinking it was going to be a bit different. But what have you seen in Patties through this kind of COVID period? Where's the silver lining, and what are the kind of key lessons that you've learned?
For us, being in food, it was a very good industry to be in, right? Because food tended to travel, quite soundly depending on what sector you're in. So our supermarket business has been strong. Food service hasn't been so good, and our petrol and convenience business fell off during COVID. But net, we were sort of okay, and we travelled through. People were grateful to be in the food business, because we still had people coming to work. I still needed people at our bakery working 24 hours a day making pies and sausage rolls and party pies. We didn't have any drop off in overall volumes, which was very pleasing. So people were grateful to be working for Patties, to be grateful working for a food company, when they saw a lot of their friends and family and hospitality, tourism, airlines have no work.
Yeah.
So I think people appreciated actually working for Patties, because I think we all over the years, people take jobs for granted. I think for a lot of young people, they've realised life isn't just one big, party. And for many people in their 20s, this is the first crisis they've had, right?
Yeah.
And that, suddenly, your job stops, money stops, you can't go out, and they've never experienced anything like that in their life. So look, I think we've all learned we can work from home.
Yeah.
And I know, Joe, talking to you before, you've done all your work from home in a new job, and I'm in Sydney, and my business is in Victoria, and I've been working from home for 5 months out of my home office, which I have not always enjoyed. There's no substitute for face to face, and so, but look, I've learned we can be adaptable, right? And we're all adapting, and we're all being able to work from home and do our business. And I've been able to run Patties from home, as have many other CEOs around the country. We're all in the same boat here.
Yeah.
But, there's real opportunities, and I think again it's our glass half full sort of culture. Where are the opportunities? So very quickly we looked at, okay, well, where are the opportunities that this presents itself? And so, online, we're putting a lot of focus on now. Online, more food on the go. Our products have gone well for snacking products at home. So again, we're coming out with more vegetarian, more plant-based. We want to attract more consumers. So, again, it's looking at, okay, what are people doing with their lives? Things have changed. How can we be a part of that? terms of all of our sites, all of our plants, and we've got 5 factories across
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand, absenteeism and sickness is at the lowest ever. People
Wow.
just aren't getting sick, right? And so, and you go, well, that's interesting. Why is that? Well, actually, we're washing our hands when we come. And
Yeah.
look, in our business, we always have had high standards, but we're
Yeah.
finding in the office, everyone's washing their hands. We're social distancing. We're wiping the door handles down every night. We're wiping our meeting tables. When you have a meeting in our building, when you finish, you wipe down the table. So no one's getting sick. And if
No.
anyone sort of comes near within 100 meters of the place with a snivel, they're turned around, go home. So, I'm sure across the country, sickness and illnesses are well down, which is fantastic. I think we've all become courteous and more respectful. And I flew down from Sydney to Melbourne this week, and when the plane lands, everybody's courteous. We all patiently wait for the row in front of us to stand up and get their bag and walk out. And I can tell you, not that long ago, when that plane touched down, boy, it was a fight. You got in there, you grabbed your bag, you jostled. So I think as a community, I think we're all becoming more respectful and courteous of each other, which is fantastic. And the other thing I've seen is we're all supporting local now. We're all supporting our local businesses. Those working from home are probably supporting their local cafes more than they have. We're trying to support local and Australian. So I think that's been a real benefit. So, the challenge for all of us is to keep the good stuff, because things will come back to normal to some extent, right? So how do we keep the good stuff and incorporate that in our lives, the way we work? Because some things will be different and some things will be the same.
Yeah, and it's kind of capitalizing, right, on the stuff that we've done well that we can then do in the future or think about differently. And then it's, getting back to whatever that new normal is, and people, consumer and customers' behavior patterns and how they're spending their money and what they're doing with the money they saved during this pandemic period. It'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. But to your point, people need to eat. And so the food industry hasn't been hit anywhere near a lot of other industries actually have. So
Yeah, that's right, Joe. And look, I think the other thing that I've learned is our people are more adaptable to change than we ever gave them credit for. And I think a lot of businesses are seeing this, right? So previously, you could take months to drive change. We were changing things in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And people just accepted it, and people got on board, and it was just amazing. And so what we've learned now is, okay, we can change. We can move quickly on stuff. How do we incorporate that and make that a way of life and not rely on a crisis, right? Because crises don't come along very often, and you need to make the most of it. You actually need to take an opportunity of a crisis to change things. Firms are now more leaner than they were before, right? Perhaps may have in the past businesses procrastinated on, we're doing stuff, right? Because we've got this crisis. We've got to do stuff to survive. So how do and you can't live in a crisis all the time, right? Business doesn't run like that. You can't live like that. From time to time, of course it happens and you deal with it. But how do we take the lessons learned about change management and incorporate that into the way we do our business?
Yeah.
Because we've proven our people can change and they want to change. They just need a reason to, and we need to do it quickly.
Yeah, and it just, right across the board, you're right. People have said they couldn't believe how quickly that the organisations were able to pivot, and things that would normally take months from a technology perspective just happened because they had to happen. And so that whole pace of change, how do you take that momentum that's in a crisis, and how do you push that kind of change momentum through the organisation? And to your point, the resilience of the organisation to be able to change and to adapt to a new environment. Some companies have seen that that's worked really well, and other companies have said, well, maybe my organisation isn't as adaptable. But now that you know that your company at Patties is adaptable to change, how, and at the speed, how do you kind of keep that momentum without being in a crisis? It's a really interesting challenge. And without having some kind of sixth sense, what are your predictions, hopes, or things that you're thinking about for 2021, right? So 2020 has been a year, but where's your focus for 2021 personally and professionally?
For me, I always find it a little hard to predict, because all the events that I've seen happen in the last 12 months, no one's predicted, right?
Yeah, that's
So
true.
we had major disruption at our bakery over summer with bushfires, just massive disruption as staff were defending their homes. Forget about coming to work, defending their homes, protecting their neighbours, their families, and we didn't see that coming.
No.
We didn't see coronavirus coming. We won't see the next couple of things coming, right? So for me, it's how do I create, as best I can, a resilient and adaptable and flexible organisation that no matter what happens, we can adapt. And I saw that with our Bairnsdale crew. They went through the bushfires and we did a major investment last year and, changing the plant around, upgrading, and they went through that. Then COVID came along. And after the bushfires, this goes, yeah, sure, yeah, no problem. Okay, we've got to do this way, we've got to do that. Yeah, no problem. Okay. They just took it in their stride. And I think for me, it's how do we continually create that adaptable, resilient organisation that no matter what happens, we'll stay calm, we'll work our way through it, and we'll take advantage of it, ideally, right?
Yeah.
So that's that. But in terms of your question, Joe, I think the hybrid workplace is here to stay.
Yeah.
So I think we've all learned we don't have to be in the office 5 days a week. But I think we've all learned too that you can't work from home necessarily 5 days a week. Humans need interaction. So I think the hybrid of some days at home, some day of work at work will be part of life, and there'll be some tasks you can do at home and some tasks you can't. Try doing brainstorming over Teams or Zoom. You cannot do it, right?
No.
So you've actually got to be in a room and you've got to interrupt and you've got to have the whiteboard right. So there's some things you actually need. And we humans, we like the social contact. I have missed seeing my team. So I think the hybrid office is here to stay. I think travel will come back, but we'll travel less. We will still want to see our customers face to face. I've seen 2 customers face to face in the last 2 weeks and they were new customers, and there's no substitute for the face to face. But will I travel? Will my sales team travel to see customers as regularly face-to-face as before? No, but there will be, there'll be more Teams or Zooms or whatever, and there will be face-to-face. So I think it will come back, but less than we did before. I think good companies will be stronger, right? Because we're all leaner now, right? We're all leaner, we're more a bit more adaptable, resilient. So I think good companies will get better. Brands are important. I think when it comes to crises, it proved that our brands have, are trusted brands. So therefore, it's all about our brands and how do we leverage our brands. And our brands are all Australian. So how do we leverage the Australianness? So I think there's parochialism, this Australian made. I do think in the next 12 months we'll see wanting to support Australian. And, fortunately we're an Australian business with Australian brands, so which are trusted, and, we buy all local Australian ingredients. And I think the other thing we've all learnt, Joe, is that we value our friends, we value our family. I think we value freedom, and it's only when you don't have it you realise actually we like to get out, we like to travel. Some of us are missing travel. We want to see the world, we want to do stuff. So I think a lot of people will start reevaluating their priorities.
Yeah.
And I know I certainly have, and I'm not going to sweat the small stuff as much as I did before. Like, there's a whole bunch of things to do. I want to get on with it. We want to live life, right?
Yeah.
It's because you just don't know what's going to happen. So make the most of it while you can.
That's great. I agree with you 100%, Paul. I think it does make you appreciate things more and then really assess what's actually important and what's not important and what we worried about before and what's actually worth worrying about. I love some of your reflections on the whole social contact. Yes, it's going to change how we work in the office, but the actual importance of being in the office together and working and brainstorming and building those connections and relationships with our people and our customers and our suppliers. And thank you so much for your time today. I think, so much in that, right? But with the wealth of experience and depth of experience you've got in being a CEO, the importance of people, curiosity and asking the questions and listening, being bold enough to make the right decisions, even though they're not always the most popular, and building an organization that you're proud to be part of. I like your comment about, would this be food that we would want to put on our table in our family, right? And being really true to what our values are. And Patties is an Australian icon. That whole focus on an Australian brand, I think, to your point, is going to be even more important in the future, and the local produce that comes into it. So it's been absolutely fantastic to chat today, Paul, and your insight about COVID, the impact, you personally, and your kind of leadership lessons of what you've learned around your journey is insightful for all of the listeners. So I really appreciate your time and your insight. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
The Chiefs.